I picked up one 16-ounce bottle of Hidden Valley Original Ranch off a grocery shelf last week and counted 18 ingredients in something my grandmother made with 4. 18 for a dressing that's supposed to be buttermilk, herbs, and not much else. What happened to the other 14? I'm not going to answer that yet. First, I want you to know something the bottle itself brags about. This is, by its own sales numbers, America's favourite ranch. Millions of people are pouring this exact formula over their salads tonight, and most of them have never turned the bottle around. I have. What's third on that ingredient list is going to surprise you more than what's first, and I promise I'll tell you exactly where I land on this bottle by the end, but not yet. Before I get into it, tell me in the comments, is Hidden Valley the ranch in your refrigerator right now? Or did you already switch to something else? I want to know if I'm talking to the choir or the skeptics today. Ranch dressing built its whole reputation on being the friendly one, the dressing that even people who don't like salad will eat. Hidden Valley calls itself the original, and by unit sales, the company's own numbers back that up. It really is the best-selling ranch in the country. That kind of trust isn't nothing. When a product becomes the default in that many refrigerators, people stop reading it and start assuming it. The marketing leans hard on that assumption too. The imagery on this brand's own website is a carafe of milk next to fresh onions and garlic, with a line underneath that reads, "Real buttermilk, real ranch, real good." That's the promise. Whether the ingredient panel keeps it is a different question. And it's the one I actually care about. There's a plain math problem underneath all of it too, and it's worth saying out loud before we get to the label. A bottle like this runs somewhere between $4 and $6, depending on where you shop. And if you're the kind of household that goes through one a week, which a lot of families do, that's something like $250 to $300 a year spent on a dressing where the first 2 ingredients are oil and water. My mother never bought a bottle of anything like this in her life, not because she was making some kind of statement, but because it never occurred to her that you'd pay a company to whisk buttermilk and herbs together when your own arm could do it in 2 minutes. I didn't understand as a girl why that mattered. I understand it now every time I do the math on a grocery receipt. So I held the bottle. Squeeze top, easy pour, redesigned in the last couple of years so the dressing sits closer to the opening. That part's true, and it does pour cleaner than the old flip cap bottle. A 2-tablespoon serving runs about 130 calories, and the front of the label carries a gluten-free badge and a keto-friendly badge, both of which check out. Then I turned it around. I read the back panel slowly, the way I used to read a canning label before deciding whether a jar was worth the shelf space. And there it was. 18 items long, starting with vegetable oil, then water, and only in 3rd place, buttermilk. I grew up around actual buttermilk, the thick, tangy kind left over after churning butter, and I know what it's supposed to smell like before it ever meets an herb. It doesn't smell like this. It doesn't need to, I suppose, since by the time it's 3rd on a list behind oil and water, it isn't doing the job the name promises anyway. Read that again. Vegetable oil first, water second. Buttermilk, the ingredient the whole brand is named for, the one on the label right next to the words real buttermilk, comes in 3rd. That's not an accusation that anyone hid anything. It's simply how the label is legally required to work. Ingredients listed by weight. But it does mean the tagline and the ratio are telling two different stories. This is what the ingredient list shows, plainly, and I didn't need anyone to explain it to me. Do you check the ingredient order, or do you trust the picture on the front? Fourth on the list is sugar. Plain sugar, not a trace amount buried in the under 1% line, high enough up the list that it's doing real work in that bottle. I didn't expect a savory, herby dressing to need added sugar to taste like itself, and when I first noticed it years ago, it genuinely irritated me. Did you know sugar was in there at all? Or did the word ranch never make you think to look? We grew our own dill, chives and onion in a garden bed behind the kitchen, and the herbs did the flavour work on their own. Nothing sweet needed to prop them up. Finding sugar this high on a savoury dressing label still catches me a little off guard, even after all these years of reading labels for a living. Salt comes next, which nobody's going to argue with in a salad dressing. After that, the label drops into a single line, less than 1% of, and then lists 12 more ingredients under that one umbrella, which is a legal way of saying small amounts, not a free pass to ignore what they are. Phosphoric acid is one of them. It's the same acid that gives cola its sharp edge, used here to hold the tanginess steady and keep the mixture from spoiling early. It's a texture and shelf life tool, not a poison. And I want to be precise about that instead of dramatic. But it's still worth knowing that an ingredient built for soft drinks is doing work in your salad dressing. And I didn't expect that the first time I actually looked. You'd probably expect the cheapest bottle on the shelf to have the roughest label, and the pricier one to earn its cost with a cleaner list. That's not what's happening here. This bottle sits mid-range on price, and the label underneath looks no cleaner than the cheap one beside it. Paying a little more bought a slightly better bottle design, not a shorter ingredient list. Xanthan gum is next, and this one doesn't bother me the way some of the others do. It's a thickener, made by fermenting sugar with a bacteria culture, and it's what keeps the oil and buttermilk from separating in the bottle between now and the day you finish it. My own dressing separates a little if it sits too long, because I don't add anything to stop it. That's a fair trade a factory makes, and a home kitchen doesn't have to. Xanthan gum solves an honest problem. Not every ingredient on this label can say the same. Then there's monosodium glutamate. You've probably been told this is the ingredient to be afraid of. I'm going to subvert that a little, because I don't think it deserves the reputation alone. The FDA still classifies it as generally recognized as safe, and a lot of the fear around it has outrun the actual science. I trusted this brand myself for years because of a name on the front, before I ever turned it over and started asking what each word on the back was actually doing. What bothers me isn't the monosodium glutamate by itself, it's what sits right next to it. And I'm not the only one who's noticed this pattern in the ranch aisle. Food writers have been pointing at exactly this kind of label for a couple of years now, saying the same thing I just read off this bottle myself. Natural flavours comes next, a phrase that's allowed to mean dozens of different compounds without naming a single one of them. Disodium phosphate follows it, another shelf stability agent. The kind of ingredient that exists so the dressing looks the same in month 3 as it did on day 1. Neither of those is dramatic on its own. Stacked together with everything else on this label, they start to describe a product engineered for a very long shelf life first, and a very simple flavour a distant second. Does a long shelf life matter more to you than a short one? Or have you never thought about how long that bottle is actually built to sit in a warehouse before it reaches your cart? Sorbic acid and calcium disodium EDTA are grouped together on the label, both added to preserve freshness. The label says so directly, in those exact words. EDTA, in particular, is there to grab onto trace metals in the mixture so they don't speed up spoilage or dull the colour. It's a small, quiet ingredient, and it doesn't make me angry the way the sugar did. It just tells me again that I'm looking at a formula built by a lab for a truck, a warehouse, and a shelf, not a formula built by a cook for a bowl of greens tonight. And then, dead last on the label, the pair that surprised me the most: disodium inosinate and disodium guanylate. These are flavour enhancers that work as a team with monosodium glutamate. They're commonly added specifically to make that flavour taste stronger without adding more of it. I've read a lot of ranch labels over the years. I did not expect to find the flavour enhancer trio, all three of them, in the country's best-selling bottle. Remember that number 18 from the start? This is why it matters. It isn't 18 ingredients building one honest flavour. It's 4 or 5 doing the actual work, and 13 more managing texture, shelf life, and the illusion of a bigger flavour than what's really there. How many of those 18 words could you pronounce without looking them up first? If that's the kind of thing you want someone to actually find before you pour it on your salad, this is the kind of channel worth staying for. I read every label myself out loud before I ever tell you to trust it or leave it. I'm not here to entertain you for 3 minutes and disappear. I'm here every week doing this same slow, plain reading on the next thing sitting in your kitchen. Now, I want to be fair about something. This same company sells a version called Original Ranch Homestyle, and by their own answer to their own customers, that version has no monosodium glutamate in it at all. So if you're loyal to this brand, that's a real, checkable alternative sitting on the same shelf. The gluten-free and keto badges on this bottle are accurate, not marketing fluff. The price is genuinely fair for what it is. This bottle runs around $4 to $6 depending on where you shop. Cheaper than most of the small batch clean label dressings trying to compete with it. And the Easy Squeeze redesign really does pour better than the old bottle did. Have you ever checked whether your own bottle in the fridge says Original or Homestyle? It changes more than you'd think. Ingredient lists do shift over time, and availability varies by store and by region, so the exact bottle on your shelf tonight is worth checking yourself, rather than taking my word for it. The sales numbers behind that America's favourite ranch claim aren't nothing either. A formula doesn't win that many households without delivering something people actually want on a busy night. I'm not pretending convenience doesn't count for something. I just don't think convenience and quality are the same word. None of this makes anyone a villain. A company built a dressing that pours well, lasts on a shelf for months, and tastes familiar to almost everyone who tries it. That's not nothing. That's an engineering achievement. But familiar isn't the same as simple. And a bottle that lasts on a shelf for months is not the same bottle your grandmother would have trusted for a Sunday dinner. I learnt to judge food before I learnt to judge anything else. That part of me never left, and it's the only reason I bother turning bottles around at all. Premium packaging, an anniversary label with an eagle on it, a squeeze bottle that pours cleaner than the last one. None of that tells you what's inside. Only the words on the back do that, in the order the law makes the company put them. So tell me, when you get home tonight, will you actually turn your own bottle around and count? 18 or fewer. Tell me the number in the comments. I told you at the start I wasn't going to answer why 14 ingredients are doing work that 4 could do. Here's my answer. 13 of them are there to survive a truck, a warehouse, and a shelf, not to survive a salad bowl. That's the honest read of this label. Not an accusation against the people who made it, just what the words themselves show, plainly, in order. I read every word on this label before I said a word about it, and here's my honest verdict. Leave this one on the shelf. And if the name on the front matters to you more than the words on the back, at least reach for the home-style version instead of the original. What I make in place of either one takes 2 steps and 4 ingredients, standing right at my own counter. Pour roughly equal parts real mayonnaise and real buttermilk into a jar. Say, half a cup of each for a small batch. Add a spoonful of dried dill, onion and garlic, along with a pinch of salt, and whisk it until it's smooth. That's step 1. Step 2 is patience. Let it sit in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes so the dried herbs have time to soften and open up before you pour it over anything. 4 ingredients doing more honest work than the last dozen on that bottle combined, at a fraction of the yearly cost we talked about earlier, and it takes less time than the drive to the store and back for a bottle that starts with oil and water. I haven't bought a bottle of ranch dressing since I left, and I don't plan to. Turn yours around tonight, count what's on it, and tell me what you find.